Welcome back inside the den. Crazy things happening in the world of college athletics. We were going to do a normal episode this week, but nothing about this week is normal. Chris Murray was just on vacation, and I felt like the news of the world just broke with the conference realignment in the Mountain West. So we'll get heavily into this conference realignment talk and talk briefly about the Minnesota game tomorrow. But this is earth-shaking news for both the Pac-12 and the Mountain West.
It's definitely huge news. I mean, you have the Pac-12 taking 4 members of the Mountain West, Boise State, San Diego State. Those two make sense. Those are the top 2 in the tiers. And then after that, Colorado State, Fresno State. A little bit surprising UNLV's not in the mix. I know we'll talk a little bit about that. Might be tied to Nevada's future as well. You've got some members of the Board of Regents who want Nevada and UNLV in the same conference. UNLV, a much more attractive candidate to the Pac-12 than Nevada. Maybe they eventually do get into this new Pac-12. But worst case scenario for the Mountain West, potentially worst case scenario for Nevada to see how the rest of these dominoes fall. Because there was a thought that maybe there might be a reverse merger, or there might be a way for the entire Mountain West to join Oregon State and Washington State in some manner. That's not the case. Oregon State and Washington State clearly saying they only want a portion of the Mountain West, and they're paying a lot of money to prove it. $115 million, both in poaching fees and exit fees, just to add these 4 schools. If the Pac-12 was to go and get 2 more Mountain West schools, it'd be more than $60 million on top of that. So my guess is they'll look to the American Athletic Conference, maybe UTSA, maybe Tulane, maybe Memphis, maybe Rice. Go down that path, see if they can get 3 or 4 more, and then call it a day. If not, then maybe they have to come back to the Mountain West. But it is devastating news for the Mountain West. Somehow, some way, the Mountain West had gotten through this latest realignment without getting poached, without losing any members, while seemingly staying strong together. And now you have 4 schools that have kind of turned their back on the conference. That's their right to do so. They're going to have to pay a penalty to do so. But clearly they think that life in the new Pac-6 currently is going to be better for them than staying in the Mountain West. And, there are definitely a lot more dominoes to fall. The Pac-12 has to get to at least 8 full members. Right now they're at 6. But the Mountain West, they said that they were planning for potentially losing schools, and they have vetted other schools, and they'll probably have to move forward and add some schools because they're down to 7 full-time members now.
Yeah, so you did a My Week, you're This Week in 1,000 Words, and in that I was reading it, and you mentioned that this wasn't something new for the likes of Boise State or San Diego State, that they've been kind of active behind the scenes. Even last offseason from football, they tried to go ahead and jump ship. So just kind of go into what was brewing behind the scenes, and 2 schools that really wanted to get out of there.
Boise State and San Diego State at one point back in the day joined the Big East. They said goodbye to the Mountain West. I mean, Boise State, since it got in the Mountain West, has more or less been trying to leave the Mountain West, whether it was very briefly joining the Big East and then coming back to the conference when the Big East fell apart, whether it was Brian Harsin, the head coach at the time, being very vocal about trying to get into the American Athletic Conference. San Diego State, as you mentioned, they termed an exit letter to the Mountain West last year, and then they said, oh, no, we're not actually leaving because nobody wanted them at the time. I mean, I feel like a good example or a good analogy would be like both of these people were married to the Mountain West, but then they put an ad out on eHarmony saying, I'm interested in going out with you too.
Yeah.
And it just had not come up where they got any bites on that interest. Mm-hmm. And now they eventually got that bite. So, you're as loyal as your best offer is kind of what a lot of people have said over the years. And you can't blame these schools for wanting to do what's best for their schools. I think there is a question about how this is much better for them, though. And I am going to be very curious to see if more Mountain West schools join, because if you do add 2 more Mountain West schools and you're the Pac-12, and now you've added 6 Mountain West schools for about $175 million, you basically could have added 9 Mountain West schools for free, because you could have talked those 9 into dissolving the conference. It just takes a 3/4 vote. And then those schools would have been able to go to whatever conference they want, in this case the Pac-12, without exit fees and without poaching fees. So that's why I think that they're probably going to stay at 4. They might bump up to 5 or 6. I think Air Force and UNLV are probably the most attractive candidates remaining in the Mountain West for a potential Pac-12. But, we need to talk about Nevada, and they're tied to UNLV because it seems like there are some people on the Board of Regents who want Nevada and UNLV to be in the same conference, and that might limit where UNLV can go, or it might drag Nevada along with UNLV to the Pac-12. I think that's a little bit of a weird take from the Board of Regents because you look at the history of Nevada and UNLV. They were together for a couple years in the Big West, and certainly since 2012 together in the Mountain West. But outside of that, like, these schools have not been in the same conference before. You got Utah and Utah State in different conferences. You got Colorado and Colorado State in different conferences. You got New Mexico and New Mexico State in different conferences. So I don't think the Board of Regents should be holding UNLV back if that option was available. We don't truly know exactly, how that all played out behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, you're right that a lot of these schools in the Mountain West, they've wanted to leave for a while, and now this is their first opportunity to do so. Unfortunately for them, they're joining a conference that's not going to be a power conference. There's going to be a Power 4 moving forward. Pac-12 is not getting back into the power conference. They're not getting among that autonomous group. Now, they might have an easier pathway to be the top-rated group of 6 now, conference champion, and get into a college football playoff. But they're not getting power conference money. They might get $10 million per year in a media rights deal. And if you're Boise State, you're currently getting, right around $6.5 million. So it's not like a huge jump up there. But being in the Pac-12 is huge prestige. That is a great brand to be a part of. And now you have 4 Mountain West schools that can call themselves a part of that Pac-12 in 2 years. That's the other thing. You're going to have 2 lame duck years, which I think is going to be kind of awkward and interesting.
Yeah, there was a USA Today opinion piece after this. And sorry, I need to give credit to the author, but
Dan Wolken probably is the one.
Yeah, he was bringing up that there's some like delusions of grandeur going on just because they work. Even if Washington State and Oregon State somehow join the Mountain West, they'd be competing with the American Conference as the 5th best, conference outside the Power 4. Mm-hmm. And with this move, they're going to still be competing with the American Conference. The Pac-12 will be competing with the American Conference as the lone group. Top group in the group of 6.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I'm sure like in their heads they're like, oh, okay, they're gonna treat us with respect because we got these top schools from the Mountain West. We can poach some schools from the American Conference, but they're not going to get a guaranteed spot. So yeah, definitely interesting. It's kind of like, where does this leave Nevada? Do they stay in the Mountain West? Well, probably. But the bigger question comes up, like, how does the Mountain West use this money, all this money that they're going to get?
I mean, that's a lot of money, $115 million. What can they do? I mean, their first objective is to stop the bleeding and make sure none of these other schools are interested in leaving. But if you're UNLV in Nevada, you got to be doing everything you can behind the scenes to try and get out of the Mountain West and get to the Pac-12. Like, that's not the most loyal path to take. But again, you have to do what's best for your schools and for your programs. And right now that's getting in this, rebuilt Pac-12. If you're the Mountain West, I do have a story on our website on what I personally would do. I would try and turn Hawaii into a full member. One kind of side note to this whole story is the Mountain West now only has 5 baseball schools. They were already at 7, which is a low number. They probably need to get back up to 7, if not 8 or 9. So I would try and see if you can get Hawaii, which plays football in the Mountain West, to be a full member. Obviously, travel is more difficult, but now you got $115 million. Maybe you can build in some travel subsidies. My first 2 targets, though, would be Montana and Montana State. These are elite FCS football programs. They have facilities. They're on par with the holdovers in the Mountain West. They're regionally in a nice location. They've got good fan bases that support their athletics. Those would be the 2 I would target. Sacramento State. Sounds like they have a group of supporters trying to get them into the Pac-12. That's not going to happen. They're not going to go from the FCS to the Pac-12. But that would be a team that you could program, a school you could look at if you're the Mountain West as well. Pretty solid football program. Been in the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. They do play baseball as well. I think regionally it makes a lot of sense. It's a top 25 media market to try and recoup some of this media money that they're going to lose in their next TV deal. So those would be my 4 targets to get back up to 11 full-time members. You add Hawaii as a full-time member, you add Montana, Montana State, and they've kind of been reticent to go to the FBS before. Just a year ago, the application fee to go to FCS to FBS went from $5,000 to $5 million. Wow. So that's a big number, but obviously the Mountain West has the money to pay that application fee and maybe a bit of a signing bonus or something like that to try and help persuade those 2 schools. North Dakota State, South Dakota State, they've been mentioned. UTEP, Texas State, New Mexico State. Those are some already in the FBS schools that they can look at, but nobody of the caliber of a Boise State or of a Fresno State, a San Diego State, a Colorado State. That's tough to swallow. But I don't think there's like a grand plan out here. If there was a grand plan out here, this is a very interesting stat to me. Basically, Oregon State and Washington State paid $56 million to the Mountain West to play 12 football games against the Mountain West this season. That is a ridiculous amount of money. But when you add the $14 million as part of the scheduling alliance, and then you add in the poaching penalties that were part of that alliance that now the Pac-12 has to pay to the Mountain West, $56 million to get 6 games for Oregon State, 6 games for Washington State this season, with only 3 of those each at home for each school. If there was a plan, Oregon State and Washington State, which basically has a $250 million war chest of Pac-12 reserves, would not have paid $56 million for those 12 games. This is a flying by the seat of your pants operation on all ends, and this was huge. The big news, obviously, was these 4 schools leaving, but it's not like these 2 schools, Oregon State and Washington State, are like, okay, and then we're going to do this, and it's going to work, and then we're going to do this, and it's going to work. They're trying to figure it out as they go, and certainly they've, put a huge blow into the Mountain West, and now they're going to probably try and go to the American and deliver a blow to them to, yes, make them the top group of 6 conference and try and get what won't be an automatic berth in the college football playoff, but more or less an automatic berth because they will be clearly superior to the AAC and the Mountain West if they're able to take the top 3 or 4 of both those conferences and move forward with that plan.
Yeah, I mean, it works out for them. I'm sure people are sitting at home and being like, looking at the list of schools, and they're like, yeah, San Diego State, that makes sense. Yeah, Boise State, that makes sense. Fresno State, yes, because of the market. Colorado State is an interesting one. You wrote a bit about it, just because considering that Fort Collins is kind of a similar size community to the Reno Sparks area. What set them apart from Nevada?
I think it's budgets and facilities. I mean, you look at what is one thing that conferences look at to add schools coming up from a lower area. It's usually the budget. That's a big one. You want a school that's going to invest. You want a school that has great facilities. You want a school that's going to try and help lift financially the entire operation. And you look at Colorado State, maybe not a ton of winning, especially on the football side, but they have spent a lot of money. So I think the budget lines up with what the Pac-12 is looking for in terms of new members. Yeah, Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State, they make a ton of sense. Since the conference went to a championship game in 2013, 9 of the 11 championships have gone to those 3 schools. So they've been good in football. Obviously, San Diego State's great in men's basketball. Boise State's been really good in men's basketball. Fresno State, not so much. You look at fan bases, season tickets sold for football in particular. Boise's number 1, Fresno's number 2, Colorado State's number 3. So that helps as well. If you're in Nevada, you have to be hugely disappointed because you look at the history of your relationship with Fresno State and Boise State. You've basically been in the same conference for the last 30 years together. Mm-hmm. Boise State, Nevada, Fresno State, they all kind of went from the WAC to the Mountain West at the same time. 1 year faster for Boise State, but Nevada came with Fresno State. And now you see those 2 schools that have been peer institutions leave you behind to go to a new Pac-12, and you're not even really in consideration because you didn't invest in the facilities, you didn't invest in the budget, you didn't invest in the football program to make that one of the stronger ones in the conference. Nevada basically went 10 years after joining the Mountain West without vision, without money into its athletic department, and it's paying the price by now being left behind. Now, the Wolfpack has to hope that's temporary, that maybe this is the first wave of schools from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 and they're in the next wave. But on merit alone, I think even people in the Wolfpack athletic department would tell you Nevada does not belong as one of those schools to go to the Pac-12 because they have not proven it on the court. They have not proven it in investing. They have not proven it in facilities. They have not proven it with growing the fan base. I mean, outside of men's basketball, what can you say at Nevada is at a Pac-12 caliber level? In terms of media market, in terms of budget, you still don't have an indoor football facility, whereas Montana and Montana State, 2 teams in the FCS we're saying could join the Mountain West, have those facilities already. When you joined the Mountain West in 2012, you were the only cold weather school in the conference without an indoor football facility. You're 12 years later, you're still trying to figure out how much it costs to build an indoor football facility. That's not on the current leadership of Brian Sandoval and Stephanie Rapp. They inherited that. They're trying to fix that. But they've only had 2 years to try and fix that. You don't build that brand, that momentum, those facilities in that 2-year period. And that's why Nevada, at this point, is being left behind peer institutions in San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, that they have shared conferences with for a long time.
Yeah, so this move certainly hurts both football and basketball. However, it kind of clears the way for Nevada men's basketball to kind of finally win a conference championship and, get that auto bid. So I guess the silver lining in that is that, it makes it far easier for Nevada to make the big dance. Whereas, these past few years have been pretty competitive, which has obviously rose the tide for the entire conference. But I guess, football, I don't think you're ever, it had to be, everything would have to go right under the Jeff Cho era to potentially make a college football playoff. But in basketball, it just kind of clears the route to making the big dance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the silver lining, right? Yeah. Is that if this does play out, the Mountain West retains who it has, adds 3 or 4 schools, then hopefully if you're Nevada, you become one of the better athletic departments in the conference. You have more ability to win conference championships, something Nevada has not done each of the last 2 years. You have more ability to get the automatic postseason berth. But I don't think Nevada really looks at it like that, because you do want to be in a great conference where you're sending 4 or 5 teams in men's basketball to the Mountain West, from the Mountain West into the NCAA tournament. You don't want to be like, oh, well, we could have a better shot at getting the automatic bid, but then if you don't get it, if you lose at the conference tournament, then it's all for naught. And then also it does impact recruiting. I mean, one of the great things about what had happened over the last 18 months is it had put the Mountain West as the top FBS conference on the West Coast. If you have a kid who wants to stay on the West Coast, they want to play in the Pacific time zone, they didn't have a lot of options outside of Mountain West schools. And now you have a rebuilt Pac-6, probably be up to Pac-9 or Pac-10. And the recruits who might have considered the Mountain West, maybe not so much now, because now the Pac-12 is kind of back. And now they're kind of that top-tier conference on the West Coast. So it is a double-edged sword. It should allow, if everything plays out and there aren't any further changes to the Mountain West, in addition, outside of adding some more schools, yes, Nevada should be able to take a step up in terms of where it ranks as an overall athletic department in the Mountain West, but that's not how you want it to happen. You don't want it to happen because the good athletic departments went to some other conference. You want it to happen because you rose up the ranks, you invested, you got better on the field, you paid higher salaries, you had better NIL, and then you had better results. And, you were one of the best teams in a really strong conference rather than one of the best teams in a watered-down conference. So, still obviously a lot to happen. We'll see what does happen. I mean, if I had to put odds on Nevada getting into the Pac-12, it'd be pretty low. But if it does happen, it's going to be on the backs of UNLV, which would be very, very interesting. I just feel like if the Pac-12 truly wanted more Mountain West members, they probably would have added them. But now they got to go back to market, see what they can get from the AAC, and then kind of move forward from there. So that might take a few weeks, maybe even a few months to sort out.
Yeah, it's certainly going to take some time, but just take us behind what's happening over at Nevada Athletics right now. Like, what do you think, like Remp and, is she having conversations with Gloria, or is she kind of reaching out to, Pac-12 representatives? Like, what do you think is going on?
So as you mentioned, I just came back from vacation, so I haven't made any calls. As we tape this, we have reached out to Nevada both yesterday and then today asking for a statement. To this point, they haven't released one. I think if you're Nevada, you are trying to be as tied in as possible to UNLV. You're calling their president. I'm sure President Sandoval has called his counterpart at UNLV. You're calling their athletic director. You're trying to figure out, how do we do this as a partner deal to the Pac-12? Like, how do we make this happen? Because there are at least 2 more spots in the Pac-12. Probably going to end up around 10 schools. I did see Oregon State's athletic director said that their goal is to get to 9 teams, maybe 10. I don't think the Pac-12 wants to go above 10 because then you're cutting the media pie even lower. That's one of the problems that the Mountain West has had. If you get $200 million, let's say, from your media rights deal and you're cutting that 10 ways, it's a little bit different than $200 million and you're cutting it 14 ways. So I don't see the Pac-12 going above that figure of 10, and currently they're at 6. So they've got 4 spots left. If they go to the AAC and they get only 2, okay, well, that leaves 2 for the Mountain West. So, I'm trying to do everything I can to talk to the Board of Regents, to beg, Nevada and UNLV deserve to be in the same conference. We're the 2 Division I athletic departments in the Silver State. It makes a ton of sense for us for that to happen. How do we, as a partnership, get to this Pac-12 together? And if you're UNLV, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that at all. I'd be like, you guys are on your own, we're on our own. Because I would imagine that the Pac-12 is looking at Nevada/UNLV and saying, Like, we don't want the Nevada side of that deal. Like, nothing against the Wolfpack. They're not the same caliber of ceiling as a UNLV, which comes with a much bigger media market, which comes with much better facilities, which comes with a much bigger budget, and which comes with a football program that's on the rise, whereas Nevada's has not been good the last couple of years. So, if you're the Wolfpack, you are trying to tie yourself to the side of UNLV and ride that wave into the new conference.
We'll see if they can ride that wave. Let's transition. Obviously, if you guys want to keep up with all the latest, news and, just conference poaching, head to NevadaSportsNet.com. Chris already has 3 stories out today, so quite busy on that. But we'll transition to the Nevada-Minnesota game. We sit here, 24 hours from kickoff, and Nevada's coming off a tough loss to Georgia Southern. A sloppy game with a lot of penalties and just misalignment and just slop all around. However, I do think the defense did play above what they were expected to, just with the talent on Georgia Southern's team. Just kind of walk us through what they have against Minnesota. That's certainly a talented team out in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so Minnesota's 1-1. They lost to North Carolina 19-17 in the season opener. Missed a field goal at the not the buzzer, because there is no buzzer in football. That's something that we've talked about in the office. As time expired, to lose that game, and then they whipped up on Rhode Island, didn't give up any points. I mean, Minnesota is your traditional Big Ten kind of team. They have 9 offensive starters back. One that they don't is the quarterback position, so that's different. But they're big. They want to run the ball. They have not run the ball very well this year, under 100 rushing yards per game, under 3 yards per carry. So that's going to be the challenge for Nevada. The Wolfpack's actually been pretty good against the Big Ten over the years. Only 7 games, but they have won 2 of them. They beat Northwestern in the mid-2000s, and then they beat Purdue in 2019. 3 other games where they were leading for a good chunk of the game. So they've really only been blown out in 2 of those 7 games against the Big Ten. One was 1993 against a top 10 Wisconsin team. We'll throw that out. The other one was more recently against Iowa in 2022. That was a really weird game. It went 7 hours because there were 3 lightning delays. And Nevada did hold the Hawkeyes to 27 points. So I think the Wolfpack could potentially stick in this game, because you look at Minnesota, their bread and butter is running the ball, but they haven't run it that well. Now, Caden Johnson, who's a starting edge for Nevada, I doubt he plays. He's got a dislocated elbow. He's one of their better run defenders on the defensive line. But I feel like if Nevada can hold Minnesota under about 175 rushing yards, I think it's got a decent chance. But the offense has to produce a lot better than what we saw against Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of that 4-series run, 4 straight touchdowns in the middle of that Troy game, the offense has been a little bit iffy. They moved the ball pretty well against Georgia Southern, but didn't cash it in for points enough. So got to be way clear of penalties, way too many penalties. Obviously can't have any turnovers, and then the run defense will be key. But that line's shot up. It's opened at 11. Now it's at 17 and a half. Now, yeah. Mm-hmm. So obviously the bettors and the sportsbook don't have much faith in the Wolfpack. I mean, Minnesota's a little bit below average Big Ten team. Yeah. I think they're picked to finish 12th out of 16 teams in the preseason poll, so or maybe 18 teams. But it's a winnable game, and you're getting $1.2 million. They got to play a lot cleaner football, and they've got to be able to do more on offense than what we've seen for the majority of the season.
Yeah, two offenses that want to run the ball. It's going to be heavy 12 personnel on both sides. That's what I noticed last week with Nevada versus Georgia Southern. They had success in that formation. A lot of quarterback keeps and outside zone runs to Savion Rudd. So they found success there. Like you said, they outgained Georgia Southern by over 200 yards. Now that's a little inflated because of a late 69-yard pass to Jaden Smith. Yeah. But those yards count, I guess. But it's certainly going to be won and lost on the fronts. And with Caden Johnson down, you're going to look at Christopher Ross kind of kicking outside, or just some Jonathan Maldonado snaps. That Minnesota front, all north of 315, so some big boys. But they have struggled, right? They haven't got that run game going. Now North Carolina is a good team, is a competitive team, but not getting that against Rhode Island. They leaned a little more on the passing game. A few catches by Donald Driver's son, Christian Driver, so a cool connection there. Makes us feel old, former Packer receiver. But it should be an interesting matchup. Going out to Minnesota, it's not going to be as cold as it would be in November or December. So, but a bit of a homecoming for Caden Johnson, who he caught up with. But we did catch up with Drew Watts, and he was talking about, just they play Big Ten football. They're going to just come at you up front. And honestly, I thought that, the Nevada linebackers have played pretty well to start the season. A lot of pressure on the front seven this week. Can they keep it below 17? Certainly possible. If it's 2 running offenses, a lot of moving clock, could be low scoring. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I mean, I thought last week's game was going to be higher scoring, and it was lower scoring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Nevada's defense really stepped up. I think the Wolfpack defense should have a pretty decent amount of success against Minnesota. I think the defensive lines played pretty well. I do think if they're without Caden Johnson, that is a big loss because Maldonado, Smalley, Ike, Nayaki, like those are good players, but they're a little bit smaller. And, Caden even said, like, at the beginning of his career, he couldn't really hold up against the run. And now that he's a fifth-year senior, he could. So, that will be the big question mark there. But, like you said, Minnesota showed that it could throw the ball if it needs to. And you look at Minnesota under P.J. Fleck, historically, they've been amazing in non-conference play. Like, only a few losses. But once they get into Big Ten, they struggle right around 500. So, we did catch up with the players, and they had, this to say about playing Minnesota this week.
And now we're on to Minnesota. And when I look at Minnesota, P.J. Fleck coach teams have a very specific DNA. They are huge and physical up front. They want to run the ball. They get into a lot of heavy personnel groups, more 2 tight end sets than we've seen in the first 2 games combined probably, or 3 games. And so that'll be the challenge is can we hold up physically with their massive offensive line. Really good runners, 24-1 are really good runners, man. They run behind their pads. They finish runs. I really like those kids. I think the quarterback is getting more and more comfortable. You see him week 1 against North Carolina. You see the progress he makes week 2 against Rhode Island, getting more comfortable with the system as a transfer quarterback. He's got some nice targets to throw to. Number 11, number 9 on the outside. He will use his tight ends in the pass game. And they've got not just 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line return, 9 of their 11 starters overall. And so it's a very experienced offensive group, and that's been his kind of recipe for success over time is build a roster, keep your guys together, and then be able to make a run when you've got a veteran group. On the defensive side of the ball, they got a new defensive coordinator, Coach Heatherman, and he brings it's a similar system, but I think he brings more of an aggressive mindset than the previous defensive play caller did. They're long and rangy up front. 17 and 97 are a real live defensive linemen. They're a problem. They're both, one's 6'5", 265. The other one's 6'3", 295. So big bodies that have some twitch. A very experienced inside linebacker, number 45. I think he leads the team in PBUs right now. And just smart, tough, Big Ten inside linebacker that has a ton of experience. And I like number 5 in particular. He's one of their DBs. He plays corner, and then he'll play some different things in their dime and nickel packages. I think he's a really, really good football player. And then on special teams, they got a guy with a big leg, a lefty kicker with a big leg, and I think they've got a dynamic punt returner too. So, we're going into Big Ten territory, have our hands full, and we got to go play really well.
How would you assess your guys' run defense going into this game?
It's good. We like this game. It's a fun game for the front seven. We like that challenge. We want to see if someone's just going to come here and try to run us in the mouth, and we're going to show them what we're about. And Minnesota's going to try to do that. They're very big up front. They run a lot of zone schemes. They got big tight ends, and they get physical. A lot of 12 personnel, 11 personnel, and they go under center, and they're just going to line up and say, this is what we're going to do. And we're ready for that challenge.
Boys just got to be hard-nosed. The D-line's got to stay in there, do their job, especially with the edge guys, making sure that we're holding the edge. And then overall, the backers do their job. If everyone does their job, we'll be good.
You guys are 1-2, but you've certainly played pretty well. I mean, pretty good football so far this season. I guess, what do you think has kind of been the difference between, being able to close out wins?
I just feel like our mindset is different from the teams last year. A lot of the guys are changing what we're doing. We're not putting our heads down when, we're down by a couple points. We're just staying in it. We're aggressive. We're doing what we need to do. And, the outcome isn't where we want it right now, but we're still working.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for us going in there to a Big Ten program, being able to show them what we got and show the world what we can do against a bigger team, bigger conference, bigger opponent. We're really excited for the opportunity that we have to put some good tape on film.
So yeah, Chris, you just heard Coach Choate and a few of the players. They certainly understand the task that's ahead, just with the physicality of this team, and it's an opportunity they don't take lightly, just going to a Big Ten opponent's house.
Yeah, and one thing they've talked about a lot this week is that they need to do a better job of executing in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter has not been great for Nevada. 3 games, they've only scored 7 points. That was early touchdown in the fourth quarter at Troy. Outside of that, they've not been able to put the ball in the end zone in the fourth quarter, and obviously these first 3 games came down to the fourth quarter. I think if Nevada can get this game to come down to the fourth quarter as a 17.5-point underdog, that's great. Give yourself a chance at the end of the game. Give yourself a look. And I think the more experience you get in those situations, the more comfortable you are executing in those situations. It's not a team that's played a lot of games close into the fourth quarter over the last couple of years. So I think the more experience you can get doing that, when Mountain West play comes, the better you'll be in those situations. So I do think it'll be a close-ish game. I think Nevada will cover the line, but I just don't think that the Wolfpack offense has shown quite enough to say that they'll go into Big Ten territory and win a game. So I have Nevada losing this one 27-17. It's kind of sad that, I wouldn't say it's clearly not trivial, but with the other news of the week, I think it's kind of a downer for Wolfpack fans. And you're like, okay, well, what are we even doing anymore? Like, we're not in the Pac-12, but obviously the players and the coaches, they spend a ton of time getting ready for these games. And I think, Nevada football has gotten off to a pretty solid start despite the 1-2 record. I do have them going to 1-3. I do think the Gophers win by 10. What's your call on the game?
Yeah, I was originally thinking 30-17, but it was a little too close to you. So
okay.
We'll go 30-20, just beating the original line that Vegas set.
Okay.
So 30-20, Minnesota wins. But I don't know, you take that if you're Nevada just to compete, just considering, just how the season started. Everything's been within one possession, right? So certainly they could be 0-3 or they can be 3-0. But I think, if you're a Wolfpack fan and seeing your team compete in these first 4 games, you'd have to walk away, like somewhat optimistic just because, just of the sheer amount of blowouts lost that they had under Ken Wilson. So
yeah, I think the casual fan looks at 1-2 and they're like, same old Wolfpack.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of nuance to records, and Nevada's clearly a much better team than last year. I think that there's a chance they could go into Minnesota and put a scare into the Gophers, where that wouldn't have been the case like a couple years ago when they went to Iowa and lost 27-0 and didn't score any points. It's a much improved Wolfpack. They have to continue to get better, obviously. The conference schedule is very, very difficult. But I look at the Mountain West, I look at Nevada. I think Nevada can be very competitive in the conference. I think if they go on the road in Big Ten territory and they win a game, that'd be huge for their confidence. If not, then they got to come back and they get their FCS opponent before starting conference play. I think if they're 2-3 through their first 5 games, it's not a terrible result. But yeah, you drill down into how they're playing. The defense has played pretty well. The run game's shown some flashes, back-to-back games with 200-plus rushing yards. Brendan Lewis at quarterback's been much better than he was last year. So it's all trending up arrow-wise, and, now you got to start getting a few more wins. It's going to be tough this week, but I think if they stay on this trajectory, I think, 5 to 7 wins could be in the picture.
Yeah, just quick shout-out to a few players. Obviously, the defense, you have, Drew Watts is having an amazing year. Just guys on the line, Henrique Hifo. And the local kid over on the offensive side, Bellin, is certainly an added piece. So certainly, you look around the roster, and there's just players all around that are, performing well. I mean, PFF had they'd been tracking the college quarterbacks, and Brendan Lewis has a QB rating of 82, which is pretty good. It's about just above average, but certainly to see where he was at last year with the bad quarterback play and to have the start he's having, it's an encouraging sign. Now, would you like to have a few players on the final drive from last week? Sure. I mean, just getting tackled inbounds with under a minute that lost them 20 seconds when they could have, with those 20 seconds gained 10, 15 extra yards. Maybe they would have put the ball in the end zone on the Hail Mary,
Well, Nevada's not built to come from behind, and I think that'll be a key against Minnesota. You got the ball at 90 seconds, got to go the length of the field. Yeah. Nevada's had that twice, SMU and Georgia Southern. And, Georgia Southern, the Hail Mary was completed, but, the first 5 or 6 plays on that series were kind of disastrous. Yeah. That is not how this team is supposed to win games. It's supposed to win games by controlling the clock, by controlling the turnovers, by controlling their tempers, I guess, with some of the penalties they've had, by getting a lead and trying to melt the clock. And they've been able to do that for a lot of these games. Now, they got down to Troy early, but there was still a lot of game left. if they're down double digits early on in this game, that's going to be troublesome because that's just not how Nevada's built right now. I mean, Jeff Choate did say something that I thought was super interesting. He said when he took over at Montana State, he kind of knew they were going to lose big to start, and then they were going to lose small, and they were going to win small, and then they were going to win big. And that usually takes multiple years to go through. Nevada skipped that first step. They're not doing lose big.
Yeah.
They've gone straight to lose small, partially because of the transfer portal, partially because they're getting the most out of their players. Now, how do they get from lose small to win small in this short period this year and not have to wait till next year to do that? That's kind of their big challenge. Nobody wants to lose small, but that's a lot better than 4-20 the last 2 seasons, 16 of those losses by double digits. They were losing big for 2 straight years, and they've already gotten to lose small against pretty good competition. I mean, you're talking about SMU, you're talking about Troy and Georgia Southern. Those are probably all bowl teams. Minnesota's probably a bowl team. How do you go from lose small to win small? It's all about that execution in the fourth quarter, which Nevada has not got down yet. But the fact that they're even in that position is a positive.
Yeah, you just look at the 2 biggest things from that Georgia Southern game, just in terms of the effect. They ended the first half just with the 2 penalties and sent them at position. I'd say situational awareness both from the players and the coaching staff. So one, the players 30 yards, obviously Ika Hifa got hit with the personal foul, and then the hands to the face. It's football, it happens, but you got to keep the hands low. But when they scored that touchdown, they like hiked the ball with like over 15 seconds left, I believe, and they scored with just seconds left. And they played a pretty base defense. Situationally, you should be like, all right, we can line sticks up and be like, they're not getting in the end zone here. We can tackle them at the 10-yard line or at the 5-yard line with a few seconds, and we're going to dare them. If they come down, call a timeout, we'll dare them, hey, go for it. Go for it, with 2 seconds. Either take the field goal or go for it. I'd take that gamble as a coordinator instead of just playing base. When they went long, they played aggressive and you played non-aggressive.
Yeah, post route over the middle, and Jeff Choate said that Boise State, in the game against Boise State the week prior, they scored exactly like that. He did take some blame. They said they were in the wrong call. He has taken some blame for the personal fouls. He said he hasn't done a good enough job getting that point across the guys, and if you get a personal foul in this game, you're on the bench.
Yeah.
So, Jeff Choate, he's a really fun guy to talk to. He's really insightful. I think he's doing a really good job. I'm very excited to ask him on Monday what he thinks about this whole conference realignment stuff, given that he kind of took out the conference with his schedule. We'll see if somebody gets in his ear and is like, hey, you got to be calm because you're going to get this question. But that's not necessarily his personality. Would like some true insight into what he thinks about the whole situation, given that he was very close to getting that Boise State job as well. Yeah. But definitely a lot to get to next week. But we got a football game before then, and it's an early one, 12:30 on the Big Ten Network. So hopefully you get that channel. I get it on Hulu. I don't know if you get it. YouTube.
I gotta check.
You'll be in here working.
I have my means to watch it.
Okay,
so
there we go.
I'll figure it out. But it should be a good one. We'll see how our predictions lay out. Nevada is, I want to say, so that they didn't beat the spread last week because it was pretty close, right?
Yep.
But with this prediction, they also they make Vegas take another loss. But we'll see. Yeah, it should be a interesting matchup. It should probably be well over 40,000 fans out there. So probably like one of the larger atmospheres that they're going to end up playing in this year. So. But, yeah, stick with us for the weekend. We're going to be covering all angles, both on social and our website. But any last thoughts, Chris? Did you enjoy Glass Animals?
I did. So, I was watching Glass Animals over in Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View, California on Wednesday night, and I was getting hit up that the Mountain West was falling apart. So that's a message to me. Don't go on vacation in the middle of the week, or bad news might happen to the conference in the school that you cover.
I think just whenever you leave, there's something happens.
But,
so
it was a great concert. Second time I've seen Glass Animals. One of the few I've seen twice. I've seen Pearl Jam 5 times, Incubus 3 times, Neil Young a couple times, Glass Animals a couple times, Young the Giant a couple times. So they joined my multi-concert list. And actually, Nevada baseball coach Jake McKinley going to see Glass Animals this Friday night, tonight, in San Diego. So
nice.
We were kind of texting about that. He's excited to see that. We had great seats. We had like 10th row seats, and there were like 20,000 people there. So second best seats I've ever had. I was second row for Milky Chance at the Grand Sierra Resort. I would definitely say like sitting closer to the stage does enhance the experience. So I used to go to Shoreline all the time for the Bridge School Festival when I was in college, and We were very poor, so we got lawn seats, and we would sleep in my car overnight in a Jack in the Box because Jack in the Box was 24/7, so they wouldn't tow the car. We've upgraded in the 20 years since then. We're getting good seats now. So,
Nice.
Very happy about the concert. Not so happy for Nevada and the Mountain West.
Yeah, that's it's a way to sum it up. But I'd say for concerts up front, for football games, would you rather be up high to see all 22, or would you be next to the field?
Like middle.
Middle?
Yeah, I think basketball down on the court's the best. But
Yeah.
Football, you can get a little bit too close sometimes.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you can get a little obstructed. They're like, oh, they're on the opposite end.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wonder what's going on down there.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's a nuanced thing. But thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
We'll be back next time, obviously, to talk more. We don't know how this conference realignment's going to go. Tomorrow news could drop. So,
There you go.
People will text you too. So. All right, guys. We'll be back next time on Inside the Den.